Hey, good morning. Welcome to Top 5 Friday. My name is Christine Chappell. I'm super excited that you are here with me. I don't know if you just saw my little puppy Clarabelle. I was waving her to you guys so you could see her. She's here in the room with me. She needs to be with me in this room because the last couple times I went live, she's chewed up shoes. So we can't have any of that. So she's here with me, but I do want to welcome you. Today we're going to be talking about my top 5 Christian books on the topic of grief. I'm really looking forward to sharing these resources with you, but I also just want to acknowledge just kind of the weight of this particular conversation. I think especially if you're waking up to the news and just all of the heartbreak that is happening all around the world, but even just especially here in our country in America. Boy, are we a grieving nation, as many others are. And so I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that and to pray, if you don't mind. So I just want to pray. If you will join me, would you please? I don't normally do this with Top 5 Fridays, but I just felt, especially with the topic we're discussing today, that it was important to acknowledge. So I'm going to just read actually a Psalm of Lament real fast. It's Psalm 13, and I'm just going to read this out loud, and that's just kind of going to be our prayer to the Lord this morning. And be using the words that He's given us in the scriptures to pray back to Him, which is really what the Psalms encourage us to do, right? So let me read this, and if you would join me in just kind of having this be a prayer also for you and just over our nation and the people who are grieving today for a variety of different reasons. So I'm going to read this Psalm. Psalm 13 says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle in my soul with sorrow in my heart each day? How long will my enemy dominate me? Consider me and respond, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, lest I sleep in death. Lest my enemies say, I have overcome him, and my foes rejoice when I fall. But I have trusted in your loving devotion. My heart will rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me." So Lord, that is just our prayer this morning. Lord, how long must we continue to suffer so much evil and just evil in this world? And so I don't know how I have right words to say, but I do want to encourage you because the books we are talking about today do give us words that we can say from the scriptures, and they guide us into the scriptures and really to the feet of Jesus. And Cynthia is saying her screen froze. I'm sorry, Cynthia. Hopefully that'll get fixed up for you. Everything looks good on my end, so it may just be an internet connection. But I also want to let you know before we get started, a couple of ways this is going to work, right? Because if you're joining us here, you probably know there's a couple of things going on in this conversation. One thing that's going on is a book giveaway. And the last time we did Top 5 Friday, somebody won a book, and it was graciously provided by New Growth Press. And so I want to thank New Growth Press for offering that, but I want to tell you how. How do you get involved in this particular book giveaway? This is what we're going to do. I am going to reward the person who engages in the comments the most. And so when you engage like Ruth did, hi Ruth, she's very excited for being here. When you engage like Ruth did during the countdown, then I'm going to put your comment on the screen. This means I want to hear from you. If you've read these books I'm about to share, I want to know what you thought about them. What did you like? What did you find helpful? I also want to admit that I'm sharing my top 5 books. It doesn't mean they're the only 5 books on grief. It doesn't mean they're, award winners, although one of them is. It doesn't necessarily mean there aren't others. They're just ones that I constantly turn to and recommend, and so I wanted to share them with you. So comment, engage, give feedback. I will put comments on the screen so that the other viewers can. All right, yay, Cynthia, yay. Oh, wait. Can you guys hear that? Tell me, comment if you can hear. Can you hear the applause? That's new. That's a new button. So if you heard that, please comment and let me know, because that would really be encouraging to me, because I didn't know. if that button would work. One more time. Okay, if you heard the applause, let me know. Okay, so hi. I don't know if we pronounce it Maree or Maree, but either way, I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for joining me this morning. And then Cynthia says, yes, she heard it. And so awesome. I also have this one. So we will go ahead and use a couple of different sound effects. Those are new to the broadcast. And so, yeah, thank you for confirming that you have heard them. So that's how you enter the giveaway. The more you engage, I'm going to be watching the comments, and the person who comments the most will have the opportunity to select one out of the 5 books I'm sharing today. And if you are outside the continental US, you get to participate too. Okay, you get an ebook, not a paperback. And so, yes, Ruth, it does sound like dog toys. But my puppy doesn't think so because she didn't respond. So I think it's maybe just for us. But that's how you get involved with the book giveaway. The other thing that I want to make sure I mention to you is I do have a worksheet I want to give to you. I'm only making it available for the people who are tuning in live. So if you're watching this live, later on I'm going to share the link that you can click to download. I'll leave that link up for maybe a half hour after the broadcast, and then I'm taking it away. So that's my special treat to you it's like a reward for you for taking time out of your morning to join me for this conversation and to hear about the books I'm going to recommend. So book giveaway, comment, engage, give feedback, share recommendations, and the more you do, the more your chances of winning a free book. And the Lament download, I will give and post the link to that at the end of our time together. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start off with the very first recommendation that I have, and that is for this particular book. Therefore, I Have Hope. 12 Truths that Comfort, Sustain, and Redeem in Tragedy. If you have read this book, if you have thoughts about it, I'd love to hear from you. So be sure to comment and let me know, and we'll share your feedback with others. But this book is by Cameron Cole. It's published by Crossway. And I have a lot of different reasons why I really love this book. But let me tell you a little bit about who I think it's for. Okay, so this particular book, and not to give too much away about Cameron's story, Cynthia's never heard about this one. Yeah, this is excellent. And I'm going to share with you in the comments a couple of different resources for you. All of these books I have links to, so I'm going to be putting those in the comments. In fact, I'll do that right now. But also, all of them but one I have actually interviewed on my podcast, the Hope and Help podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste into the comments also a link to the podcast conversation I had with Cameron Cole about this book, about the topic of hope and help for sudden tragedy. And that's really where this book came out of, was a personal tragedy that Cameron and his family experienced with the sudden death of their, I think, 3-year-old son. That's where the ministry of this book really comes from, is that sudden death of his son, totally unexpected. And so the whole book is really about truths, biblical truths, mind you, Christ-centered, gospel-centered truths that Cameron leaned on and God ministered and comforted him with during his more, I don't want to say immediate grief because there was a process, but just that initial, kind of coming to acceptance and processing and wrestling with anger and the real feelings of sorrow and tears. I mean, this book is raw. And I think that's one of the reasons why I connected with it so much. In fact, I don't remember if it was a couple months or a month after I had spoken with Cameron, interviewed him about this book, our family went into a sudden tragedy through the sudden passing of our 38-week-old nephew. So my brother and his wife were pregnant, and Timothy Sawyer was going to make his way into the world. And at 38 weeks, we discovered that he had passed away. And so this book was right there, in a very prime moment in my life. And I have shared it with other people. And so someone who may benefit from this book. I mean, I think everyone would benefit from this book, but if you know someone who is walking through a similar situation where they have lost a child, or they have experienced some kind of sudden tragedy that has completely knocked their feet out from under them, this book, I think they would be able to relate to, especially because of how vulnerable Cameron is in expressing the very real, raw emotions, and how the Lord helped him to engage those kinds of emotions with him. And so that's why I recommend this book. You can check out the podcast. I put that in the links. So that's a free resource. You can listen to that after this conversation and get a better feel perhaps for what is in the book. Hopefully I did it justice by just offering some of my very brief pieces of feedback on it. But that's who I would recommend it to. Well, everyone. I recommend all these books to everyone, but especially this book for someone who is grappling with a sudden tragedy, trying to get through how disorienting and just it's a explosion in your life, right, that you don't expect and anticipate. And then also someone maybe who has lost a child, whether it be a grown child, a baby child, or, you know, something in the miscarriage, stillborn area. So that's my recommendation for there. Maree, oh gosh, I'm just going to say Maree. Okay, so here's this. Tell me if I'm saying it right or wrong. Okay, so if you could comment and let me know, because it looks like Maree, but I don't want to assume. So if I'm saying it right, please let me know. But yes, this book is amazing. And so please, the link is there and you can check it out. And Cynthia says, cutting and pasting a resource for a women's event next Saturday. Wonderful. Message on Psalm 56:8. Thank you, Cynthia. I'm glad this is helpful to you. Please, I just want to overload you guys with resources that you can share. They're meant to be passed along. I'm simply passing them along to you. I'm glad that you will be passing them along to others. And then Ruth says, I've never heard of that book either so far, but now I will have to get them and read them. Yes, absolutely. You can get them at Amazon or really anywhere you purchase books. It's at all major retailers you can find these books. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your feedback on that. Let's go ahead and move to the next one. This one may look familiar, and in fact this is the award winner. So not to say it's the better than any of the other ones, but I mentioned earlier that we did have an award winner on the show today, and this one is it. And so this is Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy. Have you read this one? I bet you that one of our viewers has read this one. This book is incredible. And again, the same thing kind of happened where I read this book and then a few months later we walked into that unexpected season of grief. And it was a totally different experience than the grief I had been familiar with that I walked through after my father passed away from cancer about 10 years ago now. And then 2 weeks after that, I came to know Christ. And so the process of working through grief, my dad's death, was really, really different than working through the grief that we experienced as a family when Timothy died. And so this particular book, Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy, Discovering the Grace of Lament, is by Mark Vroegop. And I saw Cameron Cole at the TGC Women's Conference last weekend, and I let Pastor Mark, know I was going to be recommending his book on this broadcast. And so if you're watching the replay, hi, Pastor Mark, thanks for letting me share about your book. But okay, so Maree says, I'm not pronouncing right. I say it like the planet Mars, but without Okay. And the letter E. Maree. Isn't okay. Maree. Is that right? Let me know. I'm trying. So thank you. And then Ruth says, yes, she has never heard of this book. Again, a lot of great resources we're sharing today. But what I like about Pastor Mark's book, same kind of trajectory in terms of how this project came about, right? So this project is birthed from tragedy, like so many pieces of our ministry are, right? I know that's my whole heart for ministry is based on my experiences. And so this particular book, again, not to give a whole bunch away, but Pastor Mark and his family, they actually suffered through their daughter Cynthia was stillborn at 38 weeks, if I recall correctly. And so, I mean, the Lord's timing in bringing these resources to my family when we were just about to go through that exact same situation. So if you know someone who is walking through that type of grief or loss, this book would resonate with them deeply because they have that connected, shared experience. But it does not just have to be for someone who has lost a child. It does not just have to be for someone who has actually even lost anyone. And that's the great thing about these books. When we talk about grief, grief has a lot. It's like an umbrella word. I like because we don't just grieve over death, although that is usually what we think of when we are talking about resources for grief, as somebody's experienced a death and we need, to comfort and walk through that. But grief can happen when we lose anything that is valuable or precious to us, when we have dashed hopes or expectations that something was going to happen, and then we know that it's not going to, and now we grieve that lost or that dashed hope. Loss of job, loss of health, loss of mobility. And so any type of grief or loss can benefit from the books I'm sharing today. But this one, I just want to let you know, has the added element of being written from someone who experienced a stillborn tragedy. And I like to point that out because resources that are that do even mention that type of grief that is so rarely talked about, I want to make mention that that's addressed in this book because I think it offers people just more options to explore if that is what they're actually walking through. And Cynthia agrees. It's so true. Grief begins with loss of many kinds, right? Yes, there are many kinds. And again, thank you for sharing that we don't just grieve over death. I'm in the process of writing a book solely on these kinds of losses. Great. That is really exciting to hear. I really look forward to learning more about that. And thank you for taking the time, Maree, I'm going to get it to where I just say it, but I want to do the Mars minus the S plus the E. Maree, I'm really glad to hear that you're working on that. And so I will be praying. I'm going to put that in a note because I think that is a great investment of stewarding whatever story God has given you, but also just trying to meet people in those places where they don't really know. Because like, even for me personally, I recently walked through a house fire, right? And so we are not in our regular house. We're in a different house. I don't even have any of these books. All these books I have physical copies of, and I don't have my library. It's all been taken away. It hasn't been burned, but I don't have access to it. It's taken away and, gone to be processed for smoke and all of that. And the troubling thing is that I kept on telling myself, well, it could have been worse. It could have been worse. And it's true. It could have been worse. We did not suffer the loss of life or limb or even the permanent loss of our home. But that doesn't make it any less difficult to walk through. It doesn't make it any less painful, doesn't make it any less disorienting. So, Maree, if you are writing resources that kind of meet people in where they're at in terms of, yeah, maybe it could have been worse, but it's still really hard, this particular book will help if you haven't read it already. I think it does a great job of addressing even that, because what Pastor Mark says is that lament is a prayer in pain that leads to trust. And there are so many quotables. That's just the one that sticks right in my head, but you will just underline this book all over the place if you do end up reading it. And so I highly recommend this particular book. You can even go through it as a small group or a community group, or if you just have a few friends, or just walking through a really difficult season of life, and they don't really know practically what it looks like to engage God in those moments when you are suffering or things around you are happening, and injustice, oppression, whatever it is, and you don't know how do I even talk in a way that offers a complaint to God, but then does so in such a way as to actually serve to lead me to trust in him more. Because that's the thing with lament, is that sometimes we may not even realize we're doing it, but we can get stuck in complaint. We get stuck presenting, oh gosh, how long? This is awful. Why is this happening? And all these things. And that's not valid to have those kinds of conversations. But what do we do after that? Because Pastor Mark presents a really clear biblical case that we don't just stay there. It's the language of lament that God gives to us in his word is not meant to just keep us stuck in complaint. It's meant to help to turn us toward God in a posture of humility and actively put our trust in Him while we walk through a difficult time, walk through hurting, walk through pain and heartbreak and grief. And so, excellent resource on the topic of lament, but also meets the grieving people where they are at. So I would strongly recommend this particular book. Let me go ahead real quick before I forget. I'm going to copy and paste. There is the link to the book on Amazon. And then I also, like I said, I interviewed Pastor Mark about this book a couple of years ago, almost now. Hope and Help for the Brokenhearted with Mark Vroegop is the title of that podcast. And I'll let you also know some of the links for the podcast episodes I'm sharing today, they're not when the podcast was at IBCD. And so when you listen to it, you'll probably hear the different music and the different title of the show. And if you're not familiar with the podcast at all, I did about a year of the podcast just being my own show, and then a year in the beginning of 2020, the podcast came over to the IBCD ministry and became the Hope and Help podcast as it is today. So don't get distressed or disoriented if you don't if you think you're listening to the wrong thing. You're not. It's just God has grown the podcast beyond what I could imagine, and so I'm grateful for that. Let's go ahead and check in with some questions here. Let's see. Thank you, Maree. I'm so sorry. That's a huge loss. Yes, you are right. It could have been worse, but we still need to grieve all losses. Exactly. And so it is tricky to know what that looks like. In fact, I still have people ask me, have you processed that fire? And I say, I'm not really sure if I did. I think so. I'm not really sure, and I think I read somewhere, and I don't remember where I read it, but just how it can be really unhelpful to people who are walking through a difficult season, a heartbreaking season, tragedy, grief, whatever it is, to ask the question of, do you know what God is teaching you yet? And so I think I'm on that season too, where, I have seen God working through this situation and have recognized His mercy and have, been motivated just to thankfulness and gratitude for the way that He has taken care of us. But I think also in the thick of it, you don't really know. You need that time, right? It's a walk. It's a journey. It takes time. And so we can't just hurry people through it and expect that they, maybe have the perspective or that the Spirit has even ministered to them all the way through that particular tragedy that they're working through. It takes time, and all these books do a great job of communicating that. And so Ruth says, yes, many things in the corner of the world. It is loss in many ways outside of sudden death. Loss is so much more than death. That's absolutely right. And thank you, Ruth, for your comment about the house fire. Yes, we hope to be back into the house by the holidays. I don't really know. We don't have too much expectation, but that is our hope, is if we could have Thanksgiving dinner back at our home, that would sure be great. So that's our hope that we have. And so we will see. And then Cynthia, thank you for this encouragement. You have maintained such a wonderful spirit through the fire situation. Well, I hope that there has been some witnessing going on, but I don't want to also pretend like we haven't had as a family real struggles and conflicts, and children being, I have 3 kids, and so everyone's on edge, everyone's getting on each other's nerves, and there's just so much to process, so many different things to consider, how grief and loss of any kind affects us. And it kind of, you have the initial blast zone, right? And then you have the shrapnel that just kind of goes out, and you may be 4 months, 5 months into it, and you're still finding new pieces of shrapnel you didn't even know were there. So yes, I appreciate your encouragement. I also want to acknowledge that I have had my moments, as we all have. And then Ruth, that what happened, why it takes time. A thing that I noticed even as for this particular house fire is, especially in the first 2 months, is like, wait, did that really happen? It's weird. It's very, very strange. Did that really happen that way? And so again, not talking about death, but thank you. I have been transparent. Well, I don't know, whatever God is using through all of this, I'm thankful for. So if you've been encouraged, then I'm grateful for that. So let me go ahead and move to the next one. So we've recommended 2. Again, if you are just joining us, my name is Christine Chappell. You can see in the scrolling ticker down there, we're doing Top 5 Friday, my favorite Christian books on the topic of grief. And this one is Grief, Walking with Jesus by Bob Kellerman. Now, this is the one that I have not interviewed Bob on. However, I did just recently interview Bob for another book. And if you don't know Bob Kellerman, he has a lot of books. And so you could spend an awful lot of time exploring his resources. And they're very helpful and oftentimes very, very practical too. He's got a really compassionate heart for people, and it comes through in his writing. And so this book I'm recommending, this is the first devotional. So the other 2 books I've recommended are chapter books, not super, super long, but different, right? Just a different format. And so if you are familiar with the P&R 31-day devotional series, you'll know these books are smaller. I should have grabbed one. I have one behind me, not this one, but I have a different one to show you. But they're not very long. They're daily devotion. So this is 31-day devotional for life. So this would be great if someone is at a point in their grief journey where they do feel like they're ready to start to do some work. And I wouldn't recommend these resources for someone whose grief is very fresh, because I think we need to be wise and patient when we are considering resources to suggest to someone who maybe their grief is so overwhelming that they just don't even have the cognitive capacity to even read. So I think we just need to be very sensitive. So if you have friends coming up to you saying, I'm looking for a devotional on this topic, or, I think I'd like to talk to somebody, but I'm not really sure who, or I'd like to see a counselor, but there's nobody in my area. These kind of books are great to meet that need. I mean, they're, like I said, they're good for all kinds of needs, but if you encounter someone who's in that spot where they're ready to walk with Jesus, and not that they weren't before, but in terms of just doing some more careful, intentional reflection on the things that are going on in their grief experience, this devotional would be great for that. These devotionals are quick reads, just like 2 pages, but like a front and a back. So very, very short, and not even the full page. And they offer reflection questions. Some of them offer guided prayer prompts. And so again, if you want to journal through these devotions and then share or dialogue with a friend, this also makes for a really excellent discipleship tool. So if you are a mentor, or just a friend, or just, you're a spouse and your spouse is walking through grief and you want to help them and partner with them in carrying that burden, this resource would be great for that as well. So yeah, I think I've covered everyone there, why you would want to use it when. I know a lot of counselors use these particular resources, the P&R resources, for counseling context. And so this would be a tool that you could use to work through with a counselee, and then have them do the like little reflection questions as homework assignments, and then use their responses to those reflections as fuel for the next counseling session. I've done that in my supervision hours that I've been doing for my biblical counseling certification. So that's an idea for you as well. Let me go ahead and share with you the link to that book. There we go. So I just shared the link, and Ruth says she's never heard of this book. Yes, Bob does have other books on the topic of grief. And so if you enjoyed that, you will like this. And so this, like I said, is short, brief, digestible, palatable, approachable, all those things that we really need when we are feeling crushed by grief and loss. So that's why I'm recommending it. And then Cynthia says that her husband reviewed this one for Bob and agreed so helpful. Cynthia, if you have, excuse me, Was that review on a blog? Please share it. If you can find the link at some point, come back to this video and share it. Love to check that review out if it is online. So thank you for sharing that. And then Maree says, would this be for other losses too? I actually pulled up the book here. I have it with me. And so let me look through it and give you a couple of nuggets. Let's see. I don't know. I don't know if I would say that it is for other types of loss. The whole point of, or the approach that Bob is taking in this book, well, let me read what he says. Grief, it comes in all forms and fashions because loss comes in all shapes and sizes. So yes, I think that you could use this in as part of a supplement to the other resources that I've talked about. He says that grief could be betrayal, rejection, a stab in the back, a terminal diagnosis, separation and divorce, a church split, a prodigal child, job termination, and the list goes on. So yes, to answer that, I was looking to see if he specifically answered that in the book, and he does. So you could go ahead and use that for other types of grief. And really, like I will continue to say, all of the books I'm recommending in this broadcast are for, okay, Cynthia says the review is no longer online. Okay, well, but I'm glad that he was able to review it, and I'm sure he helped spread the word about the resource when he was able to do that. Yeah, and then Maree, yes, exactly. So this particular one, we could go ahead and use for all types of different loss like we have been talking about on the broadcast. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next one, and we're moving right along. If you're just joining me, I'm Christine Chappell, Top 5 Friday, and sharing with you my favorite or my top 5 recommendations for Christian books on grief. We've shared 2 at the beginning of the show that are more like chapter books, and this is the second devotional. So yeah, another devotional, and I'm really happy actually to even feature 2 devotionals, because I feel like once you're done with working through one, which a lot of times people will go back and do it again, and you're more than welcome to do that. But it's like, okay, well, now I've kind of walked through this journey, through this devotional, and guess what? The grief's still there. I'm not like, okay, 31 days and now I feel better and everything's great. So it's a journey, right? We continue to go through it. And this would be another resource. Have you read this? Have you seen Paul Touch's book, A Small Book for the Hurting Heart, Meditations on Loss, Grief, and Healing? If you have, I'd love to hear what you thought about it. This particular book is with New Growth Press, and I think it only comes in a hard, I mean, there's an electronic version, of course, but I don't think there's a paperback version. I think it only comes in hard copy. I could be wrong, but last I checked, it was just a hard copy. And it's smaller in size. That's a small book, but it's thicker. It's thicker than Bob's book on the 31-day devotionals. I think Paul's book, again, I don't have it here in my hands, but I want to say it's 52 devotions or 50. Hey, if you know and you have the book, let me know. Comment and let me know if you know how long this one is. But it's similar fashion in terms of the structure. So this particular book is short, so maybe a front and back reflection, smaller page, and then some, Paul does a really great job of guiding us into engaging with God's word and the various experiences that we go through on our journey through loss, grief, and healing. Oh, I always get those words mixed up. I think I said on meditations on grief, loss, and healing, and it's switched around. So anyway, but there you have that particular book. And I did interview Paul on my Hope and Help podcast. So let me go ahead and share those links with you now. So I'm sharing the link for the book on Amazon, and then the conversation I had with Paul when this book first came out was Hope and Help for Grief and Loss with Paul Touches. And so again, the Cynthia says that she thinks it's about 200 pages. And so, yeah, that sounds about right. But they're smaller. And so, again, this resource is very approachable, palatable, meeting someone right where they're at as they're working through their grief situation. And Ruth says, another book she hasn't heard of. So great. I'm glad I'm introducing you to new resources. Paul Touches does share some great thoughts in his other books, and he is very similar in terms of his ministry to Robert Kellerman or Bob Kellerman. He has written so many books also. God has just blessed those two men to be able to have the ability to do that. I'm in the middle of writing, at the end of writing a bigger book. I've written some mini books, and this particular one I'm working on right now is bigger. And boy, it is a process. And so, yeah, for these guys to have written so many, it's like, wow, that's incredible. But yeah, Paul is also a friend of mine and an editor of the mini books that I have written. And so I'm very thankful for his ministry. And Cynthia says, these devotionals are so helpful with bereavement. Like you mentioned, sometimes it's hard to read when grieving. Absolutely. Which is why I always want to try to share helpful podcast conversations in these broadcasts if I am able, because sometimes we come across people who are looking for resources, or maybe they're just about to be at that point where they might be ready to explore, but maybe not really for themselves dive in and read. And so I think it's really helpful to have different ways of taking in some of this stuff. And the podcast conversations that I'm sharing with you are all based on the content in this book. So if you know someone who could benefit from listening to these podcasts, that might just start the conversation and even just give them some hope for the day, right? Just hope for the minute that they can hold on to by hearing the voices of people who have walked through very difficult situations and are able to comfort us with the comfort that they themselves have received from God, right? Which is God's design. It's God's design for us to be able to do that. And so I'm thankful for all of these authors to help us work through those different challenging emotions, because with grief, you just never know what you're going to get, right? I mean, it can be the whole gamut, and it's really hard. So thank you guys for your feedback on that. And hopefully I posted the links, so we should be good on Paul's, both this devotional and then Robert's or Bob's devotional. Excellent. And I would recommend that you can use them in, again, a discipleship manner, counseling context, or just for your own personal reflection. They're small enough to read, in 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. But they give you that extra meat to where you can start to really engage God or reflect and go a little bit deeper into your own heart as to the different things you're experiencing in your grief walk. So this is the last one I'm sharing. So we've made it through 2 chapter books, 2 devotionals, and now this one. And is this one a surprise for you? Have you heard of it? This is What Grieving People Wish You Knew About What Really Helps and What Really Hurts by Nancy Guthrie. And I am recommending this particular book for a number of reasons. I will tell you that this book, I believe, is helpful for both the sufferer and the helper. And here's why. I think that Nancy does a very good job of giving the reader and equipping the reader with language that they may not have, or she gives the readers words to express what they're feeling that they didn't even know they needed. It's very intuitive the way that she writes this book, and of course she's even writing out of her own life tragedy of losing her baby. Again, so we have 3 books here that are all where that is kind of a centerpiece of the story. I don't remember if she shares how many months that I think her daughter's name was Hope lived. I think it was only a few. But in any case, that is part of Nancy's story as well. And if you don't know or are not familiar with Nancy's ministry, she continues to host respite retreats for parents who have lost children. And so it's a big part of her ministry. I'm very thankful for it. So I like this book for the person who is grieving, perhaps a little bit farther along in the process. And the way that I even presented these resources is to suggest even a flow, perhaps like a flow of how you might present them. I think Cameron's book does a great job of immediately ministering to someone who is coming fresh out of an awful awful loss. Sudden tragedy is the point of, is the theme of that particular book, but it could be applicable to anyone. And then moving to Pastor Mark's book, Learning the Language of Lament, which helps us to sit between the pain and our pain and God's promise, and to vocalize not only our grief when it's death, but also how does that look in a community? How does it look like in a church? How does it look like to lament different kinds of losses, not just death, but injustice or health issues, whatever that particular loss or grief may be. The devotionals, again, daily things that you can use to continue to engage God and work through, process some of the things that you're experiencing. And then when you feel like you might even be at that point in your grief experience where you have a little bit of perspective, and some of us, because of what we've walked through, right, God has turned our grief into a calling to, like I said, comfort others with the comfort that he has given to us. And this book will help you to do that, because I think Nancy not only gives words to the people who are grieving and explains where they're reading what she's saying and how she's explaining her own grief process, and they say, yeah, that's what I was feeling too. And so they find a fellow friend in Nancy because of the way that she shares and she puts into words the experience of grief in really surprising and helpful, practical ways. But I also like this book because it equips the helper, the counselor, the friend, just a Christian in general, to know what is most helpful that this person needs to hear right now, and what is not necessarily helpful for me to say, because there are a lot of kind of reflexive responses that we can give to people in their grief that we mean well, but maybe we really don't know what to say to try to enter in that person's experience. And so she gives us cautions about, hey, maybe steer clear of this, and here's why, and say this instead. And so it's not just a book about don't say this, don't say that, but then she equips us with what is helpful. And so I love, I just copied and pasted the book link on Amazon, and I did, before I came over to IBCD, pasted that one as well, the podcast, Hope and Help for Grief Care with Nancy Guthrie. So that was a conversation I had with her before I came over to IBCD on the podcast. And I recommend that you listen to that. It'd be a really great introduction to the book if this is of interest to you. So let me see if we have, Cynthia says Nancy's book has been used by our church to help teach people how to best encourage those going through loss. That is great news, a wonderful resource to go through as a church community. And can I just even be honest, is how much do we need that right now? How much do our local churches need to be equipped with language that meets sorrowing people where they are at? Because every single morning we wake up, there's more and more sorrow that we are becoming aware of, right? I mean, it exists and we know it exists, but it just seems like it's getting more pushed into the front of our face through social media and various online blogs and the chatter and the news programs. I mean, we're just getting inundated with things worthy to lament. And so we need to get ourselves equipped to speak the language of sorrow so that the sorrowing don't feel ostracized or stigmatized when they come to church on Sunday morning. So I'm very thankful to hear that your church has used Nancy's book, and Cynthia said this was really amazing. And that, God used her ministry or her grief to open up a whole ministry. And, I have to be honest with you, that's the theme that I see a lot of times. Our greatest, somebody, I don't remember who said it, that our greatest ministries will often come from our greatest griefs. And the reason for that being is because God meets us in our greatest griefs in ways that the world cannot. And so how do we even steward our stories? That's something I love to talk about. How do we even steward our grief in time, when time is right? How can we steward those stories for the glory of God and the comfort of other people? And so I'm getting on a soapbox. I don't want to take too much longer than talking to you. I know you're taking time out of your day, but I could talk about that for an awful long time. It's like the heartbeat of my ministry. And so Maree says, Maree says, oh, what a helpful book so far. All these books are new to me. Oh, that's so exciting. I'm so thankful. Sometimes I feel like because they're so familiar to me, I'm like, well, I'm not sharing anything new today, but I am always hoping there'll be somebody new on the podcast or the broadcast who has not heard of these. And then you will have pretty much a good reading schedule for the next, let's say, maybe 4 months or something, depending on how quickly you read. These are great. And again, this even, my whole hope for these broadcasts is to raise awareness about these books so that when you see someone or someone comes to you and says, do you know a book for this situation? Do you know I have a friend who just lost their baby and I don't know what to say or how to comfort her or what I could even point her to, what direction she can go in for some comfort and some encouragement from the scriptures, not from the world, but from the scriptures. Where can they go? And so that's why I'm doing these broadcasts. And so thank you guys so much for commenting. I'm glad that these were helpful and that they're new. Let me go ahead and just share. So these are the 5, right? So we have Therefore I Have Hope by Cameron Cole, Dark Clouds, Deep Mercies by Mark Vroegop, Grief, Walking with Jesus by Bob Kellerman, A Small Book for the Hurting Heart by Paul Touches, and then What Grieving People Wish You Knew About What Really Helps and What Really Hurts by Nancy Guthrie. So these are the 5. Oh gosh, Maree says, I would love to hear you on your soapbox. I will have to do that. I guess maybe I feel like not too many people are interested in my soapbox, so I don't share too much. But I am thinking of, at some point, getting on a soapbox on one of these live broadcasts and talking more about my thoughts. But for now, it's pointing you to resources that other people who I feel like are much wiser than I am have created. And so let's see. Cynthia, thank you for sharing. Let me go ahead and switch out of that. Cynthia shared in the comments, okay, we can't see it here in the comments, but she did share a book on her top book on grief. Let me go see if I can pull up on my computer. I can't. Anyway, check that out. I can't see the link, Cynthia, but I thank you for sharing that. And okay. Are you familiar with The Moon is Always Round? I saw that actually yesterday online. I don't know if I was looking on Amazon for pictures for these books or what it was, but that picture did come up, and I let me put it up here. And I did notice it, and I have heard of it before, but I have not read it. So yeah, so that is a good recommendation. I thank you for sharing that. If anyone else has recommendations on things they found helpful, you're welcome to share, and I'll share that with the group. And if you are watching, you can, but you weren't here in the live, you can go to the replay of this live streaming to the comments and see Cynthia's link, or you can just go on and type The Moon is Always Round and check out what Cynthia is recommending there. And I think you guys are encouraging me. I am interested, as probably in reference to my soapbox. And so thank you for that encouragement. And I'm sure that I will share with that as well at some point, sometime soon. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close. Let me just say real fast, let me get to the right graphic here. I am doing these top 5 Fridays on a relatively regular basis, but I want to let you know, if you are interested in getting notified when I schedule them, there are a couple different ways for you to do that. You can follow my Facebook page, Christine M. Chapel. That's where this live stream is right now. But the best way for you to know when I'm going live, because I do share more advanced notice with my email subscribers, is to sign up for my weekly email updates at christinemchapel.com/email. Not only will you get notified about the upcoming lives that I'm having, but you'll be kind of familiar with all of the different ministry things I have going on. So new podcast episodes from the Hope and Help podcast, any other live appearances or speaking engagements that I have coming up are in those emails. And then I share helpful resources in those updates as well. So if you're interested, get signed up there. And also, Maree, I'll get to your comment in just a second. I want to let you know, okay, what's next, right? Christian books on anxiety on April 23rd will be the next top 5 Fridays. So another reason to get signed up for my emails is that so you can get reminders and know when this is coming up, because we'll be doing the same thing again on the topic of anxiety. And I know that's a I'm trying to hit topics that I know are really relevant for people and for the people that are in our sphere of influence, our churches and our families. So you'll want to mark your calendars for that event. And you've got a few more comments here. Let me go ahead and share them. Maree says, thank you so much for sharing your time, or sharing, and I messed it up, but thank you for that comment, Maree. Cynthia says that the book that she recommended, The Moon is Round, I think it was called, would be great for siblings when a child has been lost. Oh my gosh. I need to read that then. I would love to check that out. I need to, that's really great. I'm thankful to learn of that resource. And then Maree, yes, you can continue to recommend books on this particular video comment stream for others to get familiar with. So again, if you're not watching with us live, but you're watching the recording on perhaps my YouTube channel or my blog, you can go to the link on Facebook, go to the Facebook video broadcast in my videos on my Christine M. Chapel page, and then you can see the comments of other recommendations. So please do feel free for that, to do that. And yeah, Cynthia responding about the anxiety and topic coming up. And so and Ruth, yes, thank you for joining. And so let me go ahead. Okay, ready? You've waited all this time. You've been so patient, and I have a worksheet on lament for you. Don't leave without getting this, because I'm not leaving this link up. I'm not leaving this link up for you guys. This is only going to be up for the next half hour, and then whoever gets it, okay? So there is the link to the lament worksheet. I'm not saying it's anything super insightful. Really, it came from Mark Vroegop's book, and I got permission from Pastor Mark to create this worksheet and share it with you today. So, and I've used it as a homework assignment for counseling. So this may be something, if you are a counselor, you may put this worksheet into practice. Hey, you're welcome to recreate this worksheet and not have my name on it. That's fine too. But for now, I just wanted to share it because I had already created it. It fit well into today's conversation, and I wanted to gift you for watching live with something that would be helpful and that you could use for your own personal reflection, but also in a counseling context. Maree says, I signed up on your email list. In the emails, do you put the links to these live events? Yes, I do. So in the week, the emails go out on Wednesdays, usually, unless I'm like running behind, but usually on Wednesdays around noon is when the emails go out. It will have a graphic in the email with a description of the event, and then I will have a link that says, RSVP here, or visit the Facebook page here, and then that email, you can click that and it will take you to the Facebook event. And obviously the Facebook event is where you can have, if you mark yourself as going, then Facebook does that really fancy ting. Oh wait. Oh no, I have a ting. I have some kind of a something. There you go. All kinds of noises. It's wonderful. But yeah, so I like those noises too much. So yes, you will be directed to the Facebook event page from my email so that you can set yourself as going, and it'll pop up you a notification. I do the timer countdown before every live, so I go on usually about 10 minutes before the scheduled time just to help acclimate people to, okay, this thing's happening, we're getting going. And you can see me waving and being a little bit silly in the background trying to prepare for the broadcast. So the email is the best way to get directed, because sometimes with Facebook, even though you may like my page and follow it, you might not necessarily see, because they're really tricky about what they decide to show you. So email is 100% the best way to know about the live events that are coming up. Could this be shared with others? So if you're talking, Cynthia, about this video, absolutely. You can share the Facebook video here that I broadcast. You can share that. But what I always do, usually my process has been, after this video is concluded, I load it up to YouTube. It's a better resolution than what you see on Facebook. And then I put it on my blog, and then I will share it on my social media. So, and then if you're an email subscriber, the following Wednesday, you get the link to my blog. So there are a lot of different ways you can share these videos. And so please, if you know someone who may find encouragement from them, I will tell you that when I do put these video replays on my blog, then I also include links to the books, like I did here in the comments, and the podcast, like I did here in the comments. So you do not need to have a Facebook account to watch the replays. You can go to my blog or on YouTube, watch the replays, and still access all of the notes. the links to the books and the links to the podcast on that blog page. So I hope that that's helpful. And yeah, thank you guys. The timer is helpful. I'm glad that you like it. Good to know. Yes, YouTube is more clear. Absolutely. Live stream is always a little bit deteriorated in quality, but I record a hard copy to my hard drive and then I upload that clean file. So it does come out a little bit more clear. So with that being said, hospice staff. More comments are coming in, and you guys have engaged the most I've ever had, which is I'm very thankful, and it's going to make it very hard to pick a winner. I'm going to have to spend a minute to count. Oh my gosh. But I don't know how I can do that best. But yes, hospice staff, anyone who's working with people in close proximity to people who are having to navigate really difficult things. I mean, oh gosh, I would recommend all these resources. But yes, the video, if you want to share the video, you're welcome to do that too. So that being said, let me go ahead. The worksheet. Oh, okay. Let's see. Maree, let me see. I don't know how to best give it to you besides posting the link. But I can message you on Facebook. If you are not seeing the link, I can message you on Facebook. And again, if you are watching live and you also don't see the link, then I will, let's see, I might be able to reply to one of your comments. Let's see. Gosh, I can't reply to one of your comments in my system. I'm going to post the worksheet again, but I will message you it personally. So that to be sure that you have it. If you're watching, and I know who was watching, right? I know who was engaging. If you haven't engaged, I don't know you're here, but if you've commented, I know you were watching, so I will reach out if you need to. Ruth is keeping track. Okay, so what I'm probably going to have to do, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, is I'm probably going to have to stop the broadcast, go back and count the comments, and then I will comment on the post of who our giveaway winner is. And then you can let me know which of the 5 books you'd like to pick as the giveaway winner. And so again, I want to thank Crossway. I want to thank New Growth Press. I want to thank P&R Publishing for all volunteering to give a free book. If any of you ladies who have been watching are outside of the US, you can have an ebook, and that's just fine. We can get you that. We can't get you the paperback copy because of postage and all that, but we can still get you equipped with an ebook. So that's, I think, a wonderful thing about the partnership with the publishers that I have, is that we were trying to get these resources to people's hands who need them. So Ruth has been counting what her comments are, and I think that's great. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Again, if you're interested, please sign up for the emails. I'm really just trying to get people equipped, and this is the best way to make sure you don't miss announcements on when I'm going live for videos such as this, and then to the next one. So I will probably put this Facebook event up on Facebook later today. But it will go out as a reminder next Wednesday to the email subscribers. So don't fret if you don't see it. And Maree, yes, I can email you that particular lament worksheet. I'll get that out to you right now. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you for bearing with my very quick talking. Gosh, I went longer today. But I hope it was helpful. I hope it was encouraging. Thank you for encouraging me about getting on a soapbox. Perhaps I will do that soon. And I will see you all next week for Top 5 Friday, Christian Books on Anxiety. And again, if you want to enter to win one of those books I'm going to be sharing next week, you've got to join live and you've got to comment and engage, because that's the way that we track around here is who's having a conversation. So I hope it was fun. We're giving a clap for ourselves. Shannon is here. Oh, thank you, Shannon. She's my favorite. And all right, guys, we'll see you later. Thanks so much for joining me today.